Have you ever heard of a bear that fought on the front lines carrying bullets and bombs? But that's just the beginning. This bear not only drank beer with soldiers and shared their cigarettes, but he also slept beside them and even showered with them. More than just a mascot for their amusement, he was officially enlisted in the army, awarded medals, and given a rank, a true soldier with an identity. The most astonishing part of his story is that this bear didn't just save an army, he might have saved an entire country. When you hear about Wojtek, you'll understand why he is regarded as one of history's most extraordinary war heroes. Wojtek was a tiny cub when hunters killed his mother. An Iranian girl found him and took him in, but his destiny was not to grow up in a typical forest, it was to become a soldier's companion. In 1942, Polish soldiers, facing the harsh realities of war, found themselves in Iran. At a train station in Hamadan, they encountered an unexpected sight, a little girl with a tiny bear cub. One soldier felt an immediate bond with the cub and wanted to adopt him. The girl agreed to part with the bear in exchange for some food, and thus, for a basket of provisions, a brown bear became the Polish soldier's new companion amidst the chaos of war. But Wojtek was still very young and struggled to eat without his mother. The soldier did everything they could to care for him, though no one realized yet that this tiny cub would one day become the protagonist of one of the war's most fascinating stories. Wojtek was so small that, at first, he was fed milk from an old vodka bottle. The soldiers nurtured him carefully, gradually adding fruit and honey to his diet. As he grew older, they started giving him beer, and Wojtek grew so fond of it that he'd spend entire days on the battlefield with a beer bottle in hand, hanging out with the soldiers. He was no longer just a mascot, he was a true comrade. In the mornings, he'd have breakfast with them, and at night, when it got cold, he'd sleep by their side in the tent. By observing them, he learned many things, including how to take a shower. He loved bathing and cooling off in the summer heat so much that the soldiers had to put a lock on the shower area to conserve water. Wojtek was given specific bath times because otherwise, he'd never leave the showers. But his love for bathing would end up saving an entire army and perhaps a country. Wojtek wasn't just the soldier's friend. He adapted to their habits in surprising ways. One of his strangest quirks was his relationship with cigarettes. Sometimes he'd approach the soldiers, stretch out his massive paw about the size of a soup bowl, and wait as if asking for something. In a BBC documentary about Wojtek, a Polish soldier described this habit. When I was smoking, he'd come up to me and reach for my cigarette with his huge paw. I'd give it to him, but the funny thing was, if I gave him an unlit cigarette, he wouldn't take it. When I lit it and handed it over, he'd sniff it for a moment and then start to chew and swallow it down. It was as if the flame didn't bother him at all. Wojtek began mimicking the humans he spent time with, gradually learning to act like them. When scolded, he'd cover his eyes with his paws, behaving like a shy child. At night, he'd sit with the soldiers, joining their conversation circle. They even taught him to salute like a soldier. Sometimes he'd walk on his hind legs to approach the soldiers, acting almost human. His favorite thing was wrestling. Grappling with the soldiers was both a game and a show of strength for him, and he usually won. Wojtek wasn't just a source of entertainment. He was an asset to the soldiers. Wrestling with a bear meant training with the toughest opponent imaginable. Despite his strength, Wojtek was incredibly gentle and affectionate with his soldier companions, his family. He lived among humans for years and never harmed a soul. Over time, the soldiers realized Wojtek could be more than just a friend. He could be a helper. They began training him to carry mortar shells and heavy crates. He was no longer just a mascot. He was a real soldier. This strong, joyful bear was given the name Wojtek by the Polish soldiers, meaning joyful warrior, and that name would, in the years to come, become a legend. One day, Wojtek went to the shower area as usual, hoping for a bath, but this time something was different. The lock on the door was open. He eagerly rushed inside, only to stumble upon something that would spark an event saving the entire camp. Standing before him was a spy who had infiltrated the camp to steal the Polish soldiers' ammunition and food supplies. The man had slipped in to scout the camp's weaknesses, but he hadn't accounted for one thing. Coming face to face with a bath-loving bear, the spy screamed in terror when he saw Wojtek towering over him. The soldiers heard the noise and raced to the scene. Within seconds, they captured the spy and interrogated him. Panicked and frightened, he confessed everything. Thanks to his information, the Poles launched a preemptive strike on the enemy group, preventing their attack. After this incident, Wojtek was no longer just a mascot, he was a true hero. His reward was exactly what he wanted: unlimited beer and an all-day shower session. Wojtek wasn't just an ordinary bear to the Polish soldiers. He was family to these men who had lost their homeland, hadn't seen their loved ones in years, and didn't even know if they were still alive. He was a source of life in the midst of war. He brought them hope, laughter, and renewed energy. Wojtek's pure love illuminated their spirits in the darkness of conflict. But a tough challenge loomed ahead. The Polish soldiers were about to be sent to Italy to fight the Nazis. There was a major problem. Animals weren't allowed on military ships. Wojtek was an irreplaceable part of their family, but convincing the authorities of that was impossible. The soldiers refused to leave him behind. There was only one solution: make Wojtek an official soldier, and so they did. Wojtek was formally enlisted in the army. He now had a name, a rank, a serial number, and an official identity. They prepared a large crate for him on the ship, stocked it with plenty of food, and brought him along to the battlefield. Wojtek was no longer just a friend, he was officially a soldier. Wojtek started with the rank of private, but he would eventually rise to corporal. When the ship reached Italy, a marshal greeted the soldiers at the port, checking the roster. But something was off. One soldier seemed to be missing. Suspecting a deserter, the marshal grew wary. Then one of the Polish soldiers pointed at Wojtek. The marshal was utterly dumbfounded. There was a bear in the army standing right in front of him with a rank. Stunned, he completed the count, and Wojtek officially remained part of the unit. In 1944, the Polish soldiers fought the Nazis in the Battle of Monte Cassino, aiming to capture the Monte Cassino monastery. The battle lasted 4 months and was one of the longest and bloodiest engagements of World War II. On the front lines, Wojtek became the soldiers' greatest ally. He carried ammunition crates and mortar shells that would normally require 4 men to lift, all by himself. He traveled with the soldiers in trucks, right in the thick of the war. But Wojtek's contribution went beyond physical strength. His presence boosted the morale of the exhausted troops, giving them hope amid the chaos. Wojtek was a true war hero. The Battle of Monte Cassino ended in victory. With the monastery wrested from Nazi control, the Polish soldiers played a crucial role in this triumph, but one of their strongest supporters was Wojtek. After the war, Wojtek was promoted to corporal for his extraordinary bravery. In his honor, a badge depicting Wojtek carrying a shell was created, becoming the official emblem of the unit and even emblazoned on their ammunition vehicles. Wojtek loved sitting in the driver's seat of transport trucks. It was as if he knew it was different from the other seats, acting like he could really drive like a soldier. After the war, Wojtek continued to live with the Polish soldiers, and his fame quickly spread. His story became legendary, leading to statues being erected in his honor, and people spoke of him with great admiration. He was beloved worldwide, except by the Nazis. In 1947, the Polish soldiers' mandatory service ended, allowing them to return home. While many went back to Poland, about 3,000 chose to settle in Scotland, unwilling to live under Soviet-controlled Poland. Although they couldn't take Wojtek with them, they entrusted him to the Edinburgh Zoo to ensure he wouldn't be forgotten, and so they could visit him often. Initially, Wojtek was placed with other bears, but he didn't get along with them. The staff noticed this and moved him to a special area. Perhaps because he found the other bears too similar to relate to, the zoo staff took excellent care of him, trying various ways to keep him happy. Sometimes even dressing in Polish soldier uniforms or giving him beer. His greatest joy came from the visits of the soldiers. Whenever he heard Polish being spoken, he would perk up, reacting as if he were back in the old days, still embodying the spirit of a soldier. Wojtek's life at the zoo was quite eventful. One staff member recounted how a Polish soldier once jumped the fence to wrestle with him, reminiscent of their time together. Wojtek remained cheerful. Although some visitors would toss cigarettes to him as treats, he lived a comfortable, love-filled life for many years. In December 1963, at the age of 21, he passed away due to joint disease. At the time of his death, he weighed around 230 kilograms and stood over 180 centimeters tall. A gravestone was erected in his memory, and his legacy endured among the public. Even today, some museums feature exhibits dedicated to Wojtek, keeping his remarkable story alive. What do you think of this story? Let us know in the comments section. I hope you like this story. Please give it a thumbs up and share it with your loved ones. Also subscribe and press the bell icon to never miss the update from our channel. Thank you.